Do you have a 2006 to 2010 Toyota Sienna? Do you want to replace the factory stereo with a modern one? I'm going to show you how I replaced the stereo navigation system on my 2006 limited Toyota Sienna with a new CarPlay compatible stereo. Let's get to it. This is what my 2006 Toyota Sienna dash looks like. On the steering wheel we can see the left side has the audio controls and the right side has the Bluetooth controls. If you don't have the Bluetooth controls seen on the right hand side, you can add those with just modifying the steering wheel alone. Here are some of the products I used for my install. You're going to need a CarPlay compatible double DIN stereo. I also used this micro bypass to enable additional features on my stereo. More on that later. The key piece here is the PAC Radio Pro 4 TY11 interface. This allows the aftermarket head unit to talk to the existing JBL amplifier in the van to retain factory features like steering wheel controls and access to all 10 speakers. You'll want this wire harness to easily connect your factory backup camera. Finally, a dash trim kit and this panel mount USB connector will give you a clean, finished install. So I chose the Pioneer 2330 because it supports CarPlay, it has a full 7-inch touchscreen, and specifically the 2330 series has the rear guidelines for the backup camera. So my Toyota Sienna does not have the backup guidelines, and this will add the backup guideline overlay to them. The newer 2400 series no longer has that feature. It took me a lot of work and research to get to this point, but here you can see the head unit inside the trim piece, and then we have the PAC interface module, and these are all the connectors that go in the vehicle. So this is practically ready to drop into the vehicle right now. I've just finished testing it to make sure that everything works, and I have to do a little bit more wiring, so I'm going to go over the wiring, some of the details with you right now. So this is the PAC interface unit. This side goes into the Pioneer stereo, and this side goes into the Sienna's dash. So on the connectors here we have an output for, we have an input for power. So this is going to grab the yellow power, the red accessory when you turn the key on, and the black ground from the car to power both the PAC interface unit, Radio Pro 4, and the Pioneer head unit. All of these wires are mostly data wires that are going to communicate between the head unit and the PAC interface. And then this last bundle over here is your standard stereo speakers, front and back, left and right pairs that you'll notice are the traditional colors. Now, I'm not using the rears, but I left them attached in case I need to use this in the future, but I shouldn't need these at all. So I'm going to go over some of the specific wires and what they're doing. So this is the main harness connector on the back of my Sienna. You'll see that it has the constant power, the accessory, this is the illumination. That is orange. The blue down here is the power for the antenna. So this powers the antenna's amplifier so that you get a good AM/FM signal. These two pink wires are the transmission data connection between the PAC and the JBL amplifier. What this allows the PAC unit to do is to talk to the JBL built-in amplifier and negotiate what it's going to do as far as change the bass or turn on and off the amplifier, etc. And then you'll see the gray and white wires here. Those are the front left and front right speakers, and then we have the ground. So this is fairly simple, fairly straightforward hookup here. Most of these are already pre-wired. I just removed the unnecessary connectors, so you'll see the tape here. This is the connector number 3 for the Toyota, and it's the second connector I'll be using. You don't use 2 and 4 on the limited Toyota Sienna. I cut a number of these wires because we don't need them, but I'm leaving them here just in case. These are additional data wires if you have a different model Toyota, which I don't, so these could be safely cut as well. These 3 connectors right here are not connected to anything on the other side, but would be an auxiliary output if your Toyota supported that. So in my Sienna, these are the only 3 wires that I care about here, which are this black and the 2 white ones. And this is the steering wheel controls. So the rest of these wires don't matter on the second connector. This is just to grab the steering wheel controls. Now the last connector is, I got this aftermarket harness extension, and you can see it's only using 4 wires on here. The rest are safely terminated and bundled, so I put heat shrink tubing on the end of all of these wires and then wrap them in tape so you can't short anything out. Now you'll notice that the pack unit came with a OEM camera power. This supplies the 6 volts that the OEM cameras for the backup cameras need instead of 12 volts, which is standard all over the car. And this connects into the appropriate 2 pins to supply power to the camera, and then it also grabs a standard composite video signal from the rear camera that I can plug directly into the back of the Pioneer unit. So all of this will get taped and bundled together, and that will get easily plugged into the car. So the last piece that's going to get plugged into the car are these 3 wires. The purple, pink, and green. So the green is the parking brake, the purple is the reverse wire, and the pink is the speed wire. Now we won't be using 2 of these wires in this configuration, but I'm going to connect them to the OEM locations anyway, again just in case in the future if I need to use them or have a different head unit or navigation, these will be useful. So these will wire, unfortunately I don't have the appropriate adapter connector like I do for these guys, so they'll connect with a standard push connector inside the car that I'll show you later. So let me show you some more detail of what these data connectors do. So this is the power out of the unit. So this power comes around and then goes to the head unit. This is the power in, so this comes from our main connector and in. And in this case, we have the red power wire, accessory wire right here. And next to it we have our elimination wire and the antenna amplifier blue. These are for the CAN bus. So this is if you have a vehicle that supports the data communication through the CAN bus. We have the yellow and black 6-volt power output. And these white ones here are for the steering wheel controls. On the other side of things you can see we have the connector coming out and we have the dip switches here. Now this is the programming USB connector, and I'm going to definitely need to use that with this configuration, and I think I'm going to leave a USB cable plugged into this so I'll be able to access it while it's in the dash without having to take this all back out. So my specific Pioneer configuration is these first 3 are down, so that's the on position, and the 4th one is off, that's the up position. Here you can also set your gain. So my gain was fine out of the box, but you can set this here, and you can also set the amplifier gain in the software using the USB. Now I like to group my wires kind of by their function, keep some of the noisier power wires away from the data wires, at least so far as to bundle them like this, and then if I ever need to get to these wires, they're already kind of sorted. So I connected all of these wires. Most of them are standard, match the color. So purple to purple, green to green on the back of the Pioneer unit. So I'll plug this right here. Okay. So again, we have our standard power wires, our sort of data wires here, illumination and backup, reverse, parking, and the speaker wires on the side. And these are going directly into the pack harness. Some of these wires are specifically tied off, so hiding out in here is actually two sets of these green, pink, and purple wires. So we have the one set that's going to be directly tied into the car, then we have another set that comes from the output of the pack unit. And that's because if you have the CAN bus attachment, then the pack unit will control those wires directly. You don't need to hook them into your car because there won't be the connection in your car. It'll be part of the CAN bus. That is not the case in the 2006 Sienna. So these are safely tied off into the bundle here, and I'm using the directly attached ones here that go back into the car. So the only other thing to note here is this is a micro bypass. So what the micro bypass does is allows you to do things like change the settings or to watch videos without having to engage your parking brake or emergency brake. And what that means is instead of connecting the parking brake here directly to the green to the Pioneer side, it's not connected. It's instead connected into the micro bypass along with the ground and along with the amp turn on, which is blue and white. So what that does is when it senses the amp turn on, blue and white, it sends the Pioneer specific pulse into the parking brake line of the Pioneer deck to tell it, hey, everything's fine, you're in park, let us change the settings. So I have a full diagram of all of this wiring configuration, all of the colors and how everything hooks up, but this is essentially what it looks like before. I'm going to bundle it up, make it look nice, and I like to label as much as I can on here, so if I have to troubleshoot this in the future, it won't be a problem. This was a bit more complicated than I thought it was going to be. They say that it's plug and play, and to some degree it is, but as you'll see later, when I hook it into the car, you do need to do some configuration and some testing before you button everything up. So I've stripped down the entire Sienna dash to make it a little bit easier to work with. I've taken off the AC vents and controls, which are just 4 bolts that come off pretty quick, 10mm socket, same as everything else in the dash. And I've also removed the lower dash here that I'll show you in a moment. That makes it easier to wire the USB port that's going into the lower dash and to bring over the microphone jack, which comes, it's in the headliner and it goes around and in through the back here. So what I've done is prepare these wires. This black connector is the connector that has the rear audio signal from the DVD and auxiliary input from the standard rear entertainment system. So I've connected the positive and negative wires for the audio, and then the blue connector has the composite video, so I've connected the 2 wires for the video there, and the gray connector has 3 wires, one for the speedometer, one for the reverse, and one for the parking brake. So all those wires I need to tap into, not specifically for this head unit. The only one you really need out of all 9 of these is this guy right here, that I've hooked up for reverse so that the backup camera will trigger. All the rest of these are optional. I want the video from the rear into the head unit, so I've chose to hook them up. So you have the 3 connectors here that are untouched, and this guy right here is going to give us the steering wheel controls. This guy's going to give us the backup camera, and the large one's going to give us everything else, the power and the speakers and talking to the amplifier. So let's hook up the head unit. Let's see. I've got all the connectors here, so I'm going to make the connections and we'll see what that looks like. So here's all the connectors hooked up. We've got our 3 main connectors. These are our 3 signal wires to tell us what the car is doing. And then these are our optional audio and video connectors. We also run the USB, so this is going from USB that's going to be down in the dash. I still have to hook up the remote connectors, just too short to reach the stereo right now. And we're all set to put it in the dash and test it. Okay, so the head unit's on, and we can check the rear camera by going to the settings and looking at the parking assist guide here. So those are the parking assist lines that I'm looking for, and obviously the rear camera is working. So this is the pack radio software. I've got it plugged in to the USB over here, and what I want to do is double check all my settings now that I plugged it in, because this is the big one that got me, is over here. If you click on the interface options, the only option is real-time fade. So you want to uncheck that, and that will allow the rear speakers to work. Otherwise there'll be no audio coming out of the rear speakers, just the front and the center and the subwoofer. So you may need to turn off the car and turn it back on once or twice after you change that setting for it to fully register and activate when it turns on the built-in JBL amplifier. Under the infotainment tab, you'll see that we have gain, fade, balance, treble, mid, and bass, and those are all the previous settings that I've used. So this is talking directly to the JBL amplifier as if we had the original head unit that was doing the same feature setting. So that's all there really is to this application, but it does let us know that it's working, and of course we can play music and check the fade, see if it is going left, right, front, back, and make sure that all the speakers are working before we button this up in the dash. Now I'm going to be leaving a USB plug floating around the front of the dash over here, so that if I do need to make any adjustments or need to change the the bass or something else on here, I can pop off one of these panels real quick, plug in the computer, and make that adjustment. Okay, now for the final check, we're going to see if the CarPlay works. Phone, lightning connector, and there we go, CarPlay. Okay, so we got CarPlay working, we know that the audio is working, the backup camera is working, everything looks pretty good, so I'm going to button up the dash and we're going to have a look at the final result. Okay, so the dash is back together and everything has been tested and working, so I'm just going to give you a quick demo of the system. We have the CarPlay, which we can switch back over to the NEX system anytime and go through all the inputs. And behind me I have the rear entertainment system, which you can't see, but I still do have the original remote control, so I can turn on the DVD using the remote control and hit play. And if I switch my input source to AV, we will see the video and we'll hear the audio coming through. Okay, so this is one of the few DVDs that I have, but completely working. A little bit of static, but not too bad. This could be the DVD, I'm not sure, but we have both audio and video, and remote and everything else works. So that's awesome. Got the radio working. And then if I use the steering wheel controls over here, I can flip through the modes. There's Pandora, the iPod, the AV, and back to FM. Okay, the volume on the steering wheel controls work, and of course pressing the Siri buttons over here. What's the weather like today? And I'm going to put the car in reverse to see the backup camera activate automatically. Okay, there's the backup camera with the guides, and we switch back to the source when we're out of reverse. The lower dash area all pops out very easily. You just need to unscrew the shifter, and there's just a few retaining clips that will pry this entire piece off. I installed the USB port at the bottom along with a charging port. So the top port connects to the CarPlay system, and the bottom port will charge a secondary device. So there's an overview of the system. It was a little bit complex to install, but once you figure everything out, it is actually pretty easy to wire. You know, there's just one or two custom pieces that need to be done from the stock pack Radio Pro 4 adapter. And now we've updated this 2006 Sienna to a fairly modern stereo. So let me know if there's any questions you have about my Sienna install, or any information that I can provide for you. I'm going to try to link to all of my charts and color wiring diagrams so that you can very easily do this for yourself and not spend 2 or 3 days on it like I did.